product specialist in medical. Today, I will going to show you the all-silicone Sengstaken Blakemore tube, product by Great Medic in Japan. There are 4 types of Sengstaken Blakemore tube available, but type 42 are the commonly used Sengstaken Blakemore tube for esophagus varices bleeding.
This tube has 4 ports, one for esophagus balloon, gastric balloon, esophagus suction, and also gastric suction.
With the starter and lubricant port added to the design, so intubation is made easier for medical personnel when they perform the procedure.
There are gastric suction hole for gastric aspiration, located below the gastric balloon, and also esophagus suction hole for aspiration in the esophagus, above the esophagus balloon. This silicone tube has radio-opaque marker for visualization under fluoroscopy, as well as measurement marking on the body of the tube for determination of the depth of the intubation.
Because of this Sengstaken Blakemore tube is made from silicone, it does not need to keep in the freezer like the ordinary Sengstaken Blakemore tube that made from rubber.
Before the procedure, you will need to have a 50cc syringe, manometer, drainage bag, lubricant jelly, silicone spray, and to set up traction device, you will need 1 pound of saline and bandage. It is important to test the balloon before intubation. For this test, we need to connect a 50cc syringe to the esophagus port, inflate the balloon with air, and submerge it completely in the water. Observe for air bubbles. If there is no air bubbles, the balloon is in good condition and ready to be used. Repeat the same procedure to the gastric balloon. For patient preparation, first, prepare the patient in semi-recumbent position. Assess patient airway to ensure that there is no obstruction. Apply silicone spray at nasal and pharynx passage. Before the intubation, inject 10 ml of olive oil into the lubricant port. This makes the removal of starlet easy later. Remove all the air from the gastric and esophagus balloon and fold the balloons to make them smaller. Next, apply a generous amount of lubricant jelly on the Sengstaken tube body. Insert the Sengstaken tube transnasally or transorally into the esophagus and push it into the stomach. The starlet will provide good support for the intubation at this point. Make sure the Sengstaken tube does not loop in the esophagus. The gastric balloon part should have reached the stomach when the depth of intubation has reached 50 cm on the tube body marking. Next, remove the starlet and lubricant port from the gastric suction site. Fill the gastric balloon gradually with 200 cc of air. With the 50 cc syringe, you have to do this 4 times. Monitor the patient for pain and discomfort as you do so. Once the gastric balloon has been fully inflated, pull back the tube gently until resistance is felt. This means the gastric balloon is now pressing at the junction of esophagus and stomach. You may set up traction by tying the body of the tube with bandage to the saline water bag and then hang it on the saline stand. Fix the tube to prevent migration by applying fixation tape on the patient's nostril or mouth. Before inflating the esophagus balloon, connect suction on the esophagus suction port to suck up blood and fluid from the esophagus. Remember, the inflation for esophagus balloon is done by calculation of pressure, not volume. Therefore, we need to use a manometer. When ready, connect the manometer pump to the esophagus balloon port and pump gradually until the pressure reaches 30 mm mercury.
The mechanical compression by the balloon on the esophagus wall will provide a dampening effect on the area. You may adjust the pressure of the balloon to 35 mm mercury if necessary. However, the maximum pressure of the balloon should not be more than 40 mm mercury, as it may risk rupturing the esophagus. Always pay attention to the resistance felt during inflation of the esophagus balloon.
Flush in cold water into the gastric suction port to wash the inner lumen of the tube. Apply suction to empty the blood clot and excess fluid from the stomach. After that, connect the gastric suction port to the drainage bag or an aspirator for gastric drainage for 12 hours. After 12 hours, it is time to check if the bleeding has stopped. Connect the manometer to the esophagus balloon and deflate the balloon by 5 mm of mercury. Confirm the event of bleeding by syringe aspiration at the esophagus suction port. If bleeding persists, send in air again into the esophagus balloon through the manometer to 30 mm of mercury. Repeat this confirmation process again after 4 hours. If the bleeding has stopped, proceed to the tube remover procedure. During the tube removal procedure, the balloon deflation will be done in 3 stages. Stage 1. Release another 5 mm mercury of air from the esophagus balloon after the bleeding check. Lessen the traction force on the tube by relieving tension on the bandage. Leave the patient in this condition for 3 hours. Stage 2. Check for bleeding event again by syringe aspiration. If bleeding does not recur, further deflate 5 mm mercury of air from the esophagus balloon. Meantime, deflate 100 cc of air from the gastric balloon with a syringe. Leave the patient in this condition for another 1 hour. Stage 3. Check for bleeding event again by syringe aspiration. If bleeding is not observed, deflate the esophagus and gastric balloon completely and remove the Sengstaken tube from the patient gently.
There are 3 things that we must take note in the procedure. Firstly, rapid deflation of the balloon may cause blood clot to plug away from the bleeding point. Therefore, deflation process must be done in stages even after the bleeding has stopped. Secondly, both esophagus and gastric balloon must be fully deflated before removal. Finally, the Sengstaken tube should not be placed in patient body for more than 24 hours, as this will risk the patient of pressure necrosis.